Have you ever felt, utterly stuck in a habit, even one you desperately want to shed? That kind of invisible pull making you do things you know aren't good for you. Most of us, maybe you too, might pin it on, well, a lack of willpower or even see it as some kind of personal failing. But what if that whole perspective is actually holding us back? Welcome to the deep dive. You've brought us some really fascinating material today, and we're going to sort of rip up the old rulebook on addiction, diving headfirst into what cutting-edge brain science from your sources reveals. Our mission for you today is to pull out the most profound insights on how addiction really takes hold, why it feels so incredibly stubborn, and most importantly, what practical, liberating strategies can actually lead to lasting change.
Yeah, and what's really interesting, I think, is how this understanding comes from this practice-oriented addiction model. It's from Forelhaus Zurich, and it offers such a clear framework. It really shifts our focus away from seeing addiction as, a moral failing or some inherent flaw to seeing it much more as a learned functional pattern.
Right, that's the game changer right there, isn't it? If it's learned.
It can be unlearned.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're here to give you that shortcut to help you get really well informed on this complex, often misunderstood topic. Okay, so let's unpack this foundational idea. The very first insight, and maybe the most liberating one from your sources, is this. Addiction isn't really about some innate personal characteristic or a specific character flaw being the root cause. Instead, like you said, it's understood as a learned functional pattern. And this isn't just jargon,
Okay,
right?
not at all. It's directly from neuropsychological findings, stuff gathered over the last, 30 years. And think about what that actually means for someone caught in it. Despite knowing better, having every logical reason to stop, an individual finds themselves dependent on substances like alcohol or drugs. Often it's down to unfortunate circumstances, and it eventually compromises their ability to live a healthy, satisfied life. And this dependence, it isn't a choice in that moment. It's more like a deeply ingrained compulsion towards habitual consumption. It becomes extremely difficult to break.
Okay, so this is where the hope, but also the challenge kind of collide. If it's learned, it can be unlearned. That feels powerful. But your material also points out the core difficulty, doesn't it, with that statement?
Yes. Understanding addiction is not difficult. Giving up addiction, however, is very difficult. It really highlights the huge active effort that's needed. It's not just about understanding it intellectually.
Right, so if addiction is this learned habit, what does that internal battle actually look like inside the brain? Your sources describe it as a problem of consumption control, almost like a neurological conflict, where two key brain systems are barely connected, maybe even fighting each other.
That's a good way to put it. Imagine your brain has, sort of, two main drivers. One is your reward system. Think of it like this incredibly powerful autopilot, always seeking the quickest route to pleasure or relief. It's brilliant at forming and maintaining habits. Then you've got your frontal lobe. This is more like the conscious pilot. It's the part trying to set a course, make plans, stay disciplined. It's responsible for your intentions and actions. Now, the crucial imbalance in addiction is that the consumption habit driven by that autopilot reward system hold absolute priority. It overrides the conscious intention to control consumption. And this explains exactly why someone can sincerely plan not to consume, make genuine resolutions, and then, seemingly against their own will, they succumb to the pressure. It really is a battle, and often only one system wins in that specific moment.
Wow, and this internal conflict, this constant push and pull, that's what your material calls the ambivalent struggle. So when someone says things like, it just came over me, or I don't know what I want anymore, or even, the addiction pressure was just stronger, I don't even know why, or I couldn't help it, how does this model help us understand what's really happening then? Are these just excuses, or is it reflecting that very real internal battle?
Oh, they're absolutely expressions of that real internal battle, definitely not just excuses. These statements really highlight the core issue. Ambivalence demands clarification. It demands a concrete decision. And to escape this really imperative habit, it requires active countersteering. You can't just wish it away. You have to actively, consciously work against that deeply ingrained autopilot.
That makes perfect sense. It frames it not as failure, but as a predictable outcome of that internal conflict. Okay, so if that's the battle, what's the strategy? How do we actually start counter-steering against something so powerful? It sounds like a massive undertaking.
It is a significant effort, no doubt. But your sources lay out a pretty clear path. There are three main areas for improving your ability to act. First, it's about anticipating stress situations. Being proactive, basically. Seeing potential triggers before they hit you.
Okay, anticipating. Got it. What's next?
Second, it involves making plans and actually acting on them. So taking deliberate, intentional steps, not just thinking about it, but doing it.
Right, action is key. And the third?
And third, it's about developing stress tolerance, learning that crucial lesson, which your source sums up as, it is possible without it.
It is possible without it. That feels incredibly empowering just to hear.
So how does motivation fit into this? Is it just about gritting your teeth, sheer willpower, or are there different kinds of motivation this model says are crucial? Motivation is absolutely critical, yeah. But it's more nuanced than just willpower. It's broken down into a few key aspects. Part of it is about connecting to yourself, really understanding your personal history, what happened, and what you genuinely want for your future. It's also vital to keep the gain from abstinence clearly in mind, focusing on the positives, what you get back.
Okay, focusing on the gains.
Exactly. And equally important, keeping the consequences of consumption clearly in mind too, remembering the downsides. This kind of dual focus, the carrot and the stick, if you like, really fuels the drive for change.
Okay, so connecting to self, focusing on gains, and remembering consequences.
Precisely. And then your sources illustrate this dynamic relationship between the pressure to consume and the ability to stay abstinent. They outline 4 distinct scenarios.
Your scenarios. Okay, let's hear them.
All right. First, if you have high consumption pressure and low abstinence performance, so the urge is strong, but the ability to resist is weak, the probability of consuming is, well, very high. Predictable.
Makes sense.
On the flip side, low consumption pressure and high abstinence performance. The urge is low, resistance is high, probability of consuming, low. That's the ideal, obviously.
Right, the goal state. What are the other two? They sound trickier.
They are. The third scenario is particularly challenging. High consumption pressure combined with high abstinence performance. This leads to what the source calls struggle abstinence or camp fabstinence. It's a state of really high internal tension. You're resisting, but it's taking everything you've got. And a relapse here is truly on a knife's edge, especially if external stressors suddenly increase.
Wow, okay. High tension, high risk. What's the last one?
The fourth is interesting. Low consumption pressure and low abstinence performance. So the urge isn't strong right now, maybe things are calm, but the actual skill or capacity to resist is also low, maybe undeveloped. Now, abstinence might be maintained in this state, but it can lead to a really dangerous false sense of security. The person might think, oh, I've beaten this.
I see the danger there.
Exactly. It makes them highly vulnerable to relapse when new stressors inevitably pop up down the line. They haven't built the muscle, so to speak.
That last point feels so important. You can't just relax and think you're cured once the pressure drops. Your sources really emphasize needing to insist on recognizing future stress situations, right? Not denying them, precisely because of that dangerous false security.
Absolutely crucial. Denial is risky here.
Okay, so it's clearly not just about stopping the consumption. It's about building a genuinely satisfying life where abstinence becomes the new normal. What does that actually look like in practice? What kind of support did this model suggest for that bigger transformation?
Well, the model really emphasizes that the addiction aid sector needs to offer a very wide spectrum of support for exactly this reason. It isn't just about avoiding the substance. It's about helping individuals create a livable everyday life again. It's about reducing the overall complexity in their lives and breaking down all those different stressors that can fuel the habit in the first place.
Reducing complexity and stressors.
Yeah.
Okay, what kind of areas does that cover?
Oh, it's broad. Your sources highlight support across practical, social, and emotional domains, all aimed at bringing genuine satisfaction back. This could include things like help with administration, dealing with authorities, debt counseling, really practical stuff.
The basics that can feel overwhelming.
Totally. And then there's building a new social environment, finding satisfying relationships, maybe reapproaching family if that's appropriate. Also, processing the past, dealing with trauma is often huge. Learning to actually use feelings and needs to clarify situations and relationships rather than suppress them.
So, emotional skills too.
Yes. And finding satisfying work, getting a daily structure, maybe education, establishing your own living space as a place of recovery, or maybe rethinking living alone if that's a trigger. Treating other illnesses, physical or mental, mitigating the consequences of past use, finding leisure activities that are genuinely enriching. And, importantly, proudly distancing oneself from the old consumption environment. It's really a comprehensive approach.
Wow, that is incredibly holistic. It sounds like rebuilding an entire life, not just stopping one behavior. The overall goal, then, it seems, isn't just focused on non-consumption anymore, but on making abstinence feel like the new default, the new habit, aiming for a satisfied life where not consuming feels normal,
Yeah.
effortless even.
Precisely. That's the long-term aim. And to help individuals navigate this, especially that internal state, your sources even mention a practical tool. It's a simple 1 to 10 scale. Before going into potentially triggering situations like going out, individuals are sometimes asked to rate two things separately: their current consumption pressure, 110, and their certainty of abstinence, 110.
Oh, okay. Two separate scales.
Yes. And this simple tool helps them gain a more differentiated understanding of where they're actually at in that moment. It makes that internal battle we talked about feel a bit more concrete, more actionable.
That makes sense. Gives you data on your own internal state. So wrapping this part up, the core philosophy of this model seems remarkably clear and actually quite practical. It's about actively building that motivation we discussed, anticipating challenging situations, deliberately working to reduce life's complexity, and breaking down stressors piece by piece. It really does sound like a roadmap.
It is. It's a clear and actionable path. Ideally, over time, with this kind of work, consumption pressure should no longer be able to sustainably weaken someone's abstinence performance. The ultimate goal is for the individual to always keep, as the source puts it, one eye free.
One eye free. What does that mean?
It means always being able or having the capacity to perceive, tolerate, and effectively process any emerging consumption pressure or new stressors that might come their way without being completely derailed by them.
Okay. Perceive, tolerate, process. Got it. So to bring it all back for you listening, addiction, when you look at it through this modern neuropsychological model, it isn't some deep character flaw or a moral failing. It's a powerful, deeply ingrained learned habit. But, and this is the crucial part of it, it's a habit that can be actively challenged and ultimately overcome. It takes a structured approach, focusing on internal clarity, getting robust external support, and intentionally developing new, healthier habits.
And this whole way of thinking, it really raises a final important question, I think. How might our understanding and maybe even our societal approach to any deeply ingrained unhelpful habits, not just addiction, change if we consistently viewed them through this lens, through the lens of learned behavior and that ambivalent struggle, rather than just seeing them as character flaws?
That's a powerful thought to leave people with, something to mull over perhaps in your own life. Until next time, keep diving deep.